Hey, Hardmancanada, how do we say what are we going to eat in French?
We say cuit manducabinos.
If you lie to me, someone will die.
Before I continue, thank you to everyone who responded to my little poll. As I make videos for you guys, this gives me an idea of which presentation my audience likes. The French version would have the most popular option and the English version will have the second most popular option. And everyone who responded will have their name written in the credits of this video. I give you all my blessing. By the way, option A was the most popular and option D was the second most popular. Hello everyone, I am Hardmancanada and I can speak with my telepathic powers because of my mustache. Today I'm going to review an excellent game called Metaphor. There will be no spoiler to avoid spoiling the experience of this game, which contains plenty of surprise and pleasant discoveries. To avoid spoiler, I only show you the first 3 controllable characters because the other controllable characters are big spoilers. Certain characters who join your team during the story are totally unexpected, and I must not ruin this surprise. By the way, if you are watching me for the first time, do not subscribe to my channel. Do not subscribe to my channel. That way you will not miss my next episode. This game takes place in a fantasy world. This world is much more brutal than our world because violence, racism, dictatorship, social inequality, and the law of the strongest is a daily life in this brutal world. In this world, the rich mistreat the poor and some like to beat the homeless for their amusement. The public execution of criminals is perfectly normal. Furthermore, challenging a person to a duel to the death in front of an audience who serves as a witness is perfectly normal in this world. Morality of this world is different. And there are several humanoid species that live in the same country in this world, like fairies, Ujif, Clémar, Luisan, Nidia, Paripus, Mustari, Rogue, Ischia, and Elda. And Elda is the humanoid species at the bottom of the social rank and suffer more discrimination than any other species. The main character is an Elda, and we witness the discrimination that he suffers daily. There is also mixed races, where kids' parents are from 2 different humanoid races. In this game, you control a group of soldiers who fight against the corrupt government of their country to try to create a better future. Following the tragic event of the royal family, who were all assassinated by their corrupt opponent, no one is left to inherit the kingdom. For the first time in history of this world, there is an electoral campaign to decide who will be the next king or the next queen. The modern console war is a war between the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. It is a boring war because the PS5 has about 20 exclusive games and the Xbox Series X has about 10 exclusive games. And they have a very few exclusive games because the majority of their games are on the last generation console like the PS4 and the Xbox One, and most of their games are also on PC. They don't really have any exclusive. Furthermore, they have a difficulty of making game at 60 frames per second, and they have abandoned their original mascot like Crash Bandicoot and Blix. Modern consoles are shameful and pathetic. In ancient time, it was a real console war, like the Super Nintendo against the Sega Genesis. These two legendary consoles insulted each other in advertising like Genesis does what Nintendo don't, or you don't need a 32X adapter to play Donkey Kong. They had over 300 exclusive games. Even games in common were different enough. There was no input lag. You didn't have to wait 3 hours to update before playing a game, and the game could run at 60 frames per second at maximum resolution, and they had real mascots like Mario and Sonic. Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis are superior to the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, and I'm ready to debate those who don't agree with me. My mustache is ready. The metaphor theme has also worked on other RPGs like Yakuza Like a Dragon, Yakuza Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Persona 3, Persona 4, Persona 5, Shin Megami Tensei 4, Shin Megami Tensei 5, Soul Hackers, and Devil Summoners. If you have played one of these RPG, you will recognize certain elements that come back, such as the calendar system for time management, the social link between the characters, the character trait of the main character, the combat archetype, and the battle system. Speaking of battle system, the combat is very similar to Shin Megami Tensei games. In this battle system, you have action icons every turn. When you execute critical attacks or use the weakness of your enemies, you receive extra action icons. In addition, if you avoid attacks, your opponent loses their turn. On the other hand, if your opponent avoids your attacks or block your attacks, you will lose your turn, and this can have a devastating effect because your enemy will have a big advantage. I died many times because the enemy dodged or blocked my attack during a crucial moment of the fight, where one mistake will make my team game over. There are two types of weakness: elemental weakness from magic attack and physical weakness from physical attacks. In this game, there are three categories of physical attacks. Number 1 are striking attacks like punches, hammers, and axes. Number 2 are cutting attacks like swords and knife. Number 3 are piercing attacks like projectiles and spears. If you are familiar with the weak point system of the Fire Emblem series, you can deduce the physical weak point of certain enemies. In the Fire Emblem series, there is a triangle of weak point between three types of physical attacks, between a spear, a sword, and an axe. Metaphor physical weak point system remind me of the Fire Emblem series, which is a combat system as deep as this. Using good strategy is essential, especially during the last chapter of the game, where you have to master this combat system to beat very difficult bosses. In addition, during days when the weather is bad, weak point or critical attack are not very effective. The combat is much more interesting than that of the Persona series. This is one of the best combat systems for a one-player RPG. Another thing I like about this game are the little details they put in it. For example, when your main character walks on the field or in a dungeon, your allies follows you. I love RPG where I love RPG where your teammates follows the main character because it is a visual representation of teamwork, which indicates that your allies are there to help you. Your allies have your back. In addition to that, you can see certain equipment that your allies are carrying. For example, Hurkenberg, a girl with a red hair, is holding a magic staff, the weapon of her secondary archetype, the healer. On the other hand, when she uses the weapon of her main archetype, the knight, she carries a spear on the field. Small details like this may seem insignificant, but in the long term, it is important for the immersion of the game, especially when you did a secondary mission that have won the strongest weapon in the game and you see your character holding the strongest weapon. Little details like that are a good sign that the developer put time, passion, energy, and love while creating this game. I bless all the developers of the Metaphor game. I bless all of you. I will give all of you my sincere blessing. Wow, do you all see this? I have a fantastic mustache because of my mustache. A razor cream is very dangerous because not only it can cut your mustache, but the planet Earth will explode if we are not careful. It shows you how much power you need to cut a mustache.
Fatality.
Another element that I like in this game are the characters that you control. The main character and his friends are imperfect people who evolve by learning from their mistakes. They all have tragic pasts which provide motivation to fight against high-ranking people who abuse their powers. This is a good sign to know if a story of the game will be good or not. In my experience, the best stories in film, video game, cartoon, books, animes, TV series are when the main character is imperfect. For example, in the old Star Wars movie, Luke Skywalker is a better main character than the new Star Wars movie, Rey. Luke is an imperfect character. Rey is a perfect character. Luke made a lot of mistakes. He trained to become strong compared to Rey, who doesn't make any mistake. And like she's a perfect character, she didn't need training to become strong. Luke Skywalker lost the fight against his main villain, Darth Vader, the first time. So he trained a lot to take in revenge, and then in the sequel movie, he finally took his revenge against Darth Vader, and that was satisfying to see because we saw the fruit of Luke's training. But Rey beat the final boss of her story in basically one shot without any difficulty on their first encounter, and it was boring to watch. Luke is a much more interesting main character because of his imperfection. The main character of Metaphor games are interesting because they are all imperfect. They are not perfect. And in my experience, if you want to create a great main characters and side characters, they need to be imperfect, because if you make a perfect main character or side characters, the story will be boring. But there are rules to this exception. But in general, to make a good story, your main character must be imperfect and and metaphor fits in this category. That's why metaphor main character is very good and interesting. Another element that makes the story very good are the main villains or the main rival. Having a good villain is very crucial. Here are some examples of good villains in other series. Double Face from the Batman series is a good example because he has a deep dimension between his two personalities. He has a good and evil personality. All of his life he repressed his evil side. But following an accident which left half of his body scarred, he gave up on being a lawyer and his evil side took over. On top of that, he is Batman's childhood friend and Batman feels responsible because Batman made an error in judgment and he was unable to save his friend. As Two-Face is an enemy who has a personal connection to Batman, and that makes Two-Face one of the best Batman villains. I'm willing to argue that Two-Face is a better villain than Joker. Yes, you heard me right, Batman fan. Two-Face is a better villain than Joker, and I'm ready to go on a debate with anyone. Another excellent villain is Syndrome from the Incredible series. Even if the actions of Syndrome are not justifiable, looking at his past, we understood the motivation of why he is evil. He is also the total opposite of the hero in terms of ideology and the way of doing things. Mr. Incredible used his strength to help people, but Syndrome used his intelligence to hurt people. On top of that, he has a menacing appearance. We feel that he is very dangerous. On top of that, thanks to his intelligence, he is always one step ahead of the heroes. He is a villain with a lot of depth. On top of that, Syndrome doesn't use a cliche that incompetent villains use, like trapping a hero and leaving them, like trapping a hero in a trap and leaving to give the hero the time to escape the trap at the last minute. Syndrome is that kind of guy who stays to make sure that the hero dies, and that's how he killed 80% of the superheroes in the planet. He also doesn't use a cliche of doing a monologue so that the hero beats him in a moment of inattention. He is the type to be careful not to do any monologue. He even made a comment on that he doesn't do a monologue, and in that moment when I saw the movie the first time, I understood that he is a real villain and he is one of the best villains in cinematic history. In addition to that, Syndrome is one of the villains who was partly right. Even if he did an unforgivable action of killing like 80% of superheroes on the planet, Syndrome has no internal superpowers, but he can make weapons to stop or kill people with superpowers. Syndrome's plan was to give normal people a way to defend themselves against people with superpowers, just in case one of them becomes evil and starts to attack normal people. This happened in the series like Megamind, The Boys, and The Invincible. A villain who is partly right is an element that makes a good villain, because it makes you question, is he correct to do that or what? Another deep villain is L from the Death Note series, because he forces the hero of the story to use their maximum abilities. L is an impressive villain thanks to his intelligence. He is the best detective on the planet. Kira is the hero of the story, and he has the power to kill anyone by writing their name in a notebook, and he kills criminals and all of those in his ways, even innocent people and even nice people. In this exceptional case, the hero of the story is a bad guy and the villain of the story is a good guy. Elle versus Kira is an intellectual fight, because Elle must prove that Kira is the person who kills people and to put him in prison, and Kira must find a way to eliminate Elle, all while keeping the secret that he is the one committing the murders. Who's messaging me on Discord? Shut up! Wow! You have the impression that Sherlock Holmes is fighting Columbo in an intellectual battle. Another good villain is the Penguin from Wallace and Gromit series. His name is Feathers McGraw. This is an example of a perfect villain. He is not physically strong and has a harmless appearance, but he scares us very much because he is very clever. He is unpredictable. He is a manipulator. His body language requires him to be respected, and he is capable of mentally tiring his opponent to cause psychological pain. And more on that, when he looks into your eyes, you have the impression that he is piercing your souls. This is the kind of person he is. If he has to prepare for a fight against a group of heroes like Team Sonic or the Avengers or Team Mario or the Fantastic Four or Justice League or the X-Men, he will sow doubt in the team of heroes so that they can fight among themselves, and he will have the advantage in battle. And he's going to deliver the coup de grace. This penguin is much more cunning than a fox. He is an iconic villain that he often returns as a cameo in other projects of the Wallace and Gromit universe. One of the main villains of Metaphor game has several elements of a good villain. He is easily in the top 3 best villains of RPG in the last 10 years that I've played. He is at the villain on the same level as Syndrome, Feathers McGraw, Double Face, and Elle. Unfortunately, I cannot explain in detail why he is a good villain to avoid spoilers, but trust me, you guys need to trust me. He is one of the best villains I've seen in a video game. In 2024, there were a lot of excellent games that were candidates to become the Game of the Year 2024, like Astrobot and Metaphor. The winner was Astrobot, which was made by the same team that made the Ape Escape games. This gives me hope that we will make Ape Escape 4 one day, because we have been waiting for over 15 years for a new Ape Escape game. Please, Sony, if you're watching the video, please make Ape Escape 4. That's all I'm asking in my life. Ape Escape 4. Just like in Persona games, Metaphor has a calendar system for time management. In each story arc, you have a main dungeon that you must complete before the time limit. If you don't complete the main dungeon within the time limit, you will get the bad ending. Just like in Persona 5 game. Some main dungeons have a lot of creativity thanks to the unique mechanic and gimmick in each dungeon. In this game, magic points MP are very important resources. You can complete a dungeon in one day if you manage your magic point well. Otherwise, if you go to rest to an inn to recover your MP, you will waste a day. As time is also a very precious resource, you must prepare well if you want to do a dungeon in a single day. In my case, especially, I use the Magician archetype to finish a dungeon in a single day because the Magician archetype has the ability to recover MP by killing enemies on the field. A very useful element in this game is the combat on the field. If you have a much higher level than your enemy, you can kill enemies on the field without starting a fight. I think this element is a great idea because it allows you to farm experience and money without wasting your time fighting against weak enemies. Even though weak enemies aren't worth a lot of XP alone, killing a huge number of them very quickly will give you a lot of experience and money in the long run. I found this to be an improvement in quality of life compared to other Atlus RPGs. This game has a world map where you move around to complete secondary missions. Depending on the distance of which you want to go, you will spend more time. A nearby place can last a day, but a distance place can last several days, so you have to plan your trips carefully to manage your time. While you are traveling, you can strengthen the bond of your allies or do tasks like cooking, taking bath, or doing laundry to increase your character's state. One thing I like about this game is that the secondary missions have an important element to give more context to the main story. Here's an example of the side mission that add to the main story. This is an optional boss called the Homo Butera. Toward the beginning of the game, you fought him, but it was a fight you had to lose because he was too strong. Homo Butera was like level 70, while your team was only level 12. By the end of the game, you unlock an optional mission to take revenge on him. On top of that, your character makes comment during the fight, saying something like, "Ha! I remember that you beat us the first time, but this time we are stronger and we will have your revenge." Some side missions, like this one, are continuation of a certain event of the main story. Plus, you get good reward for doing these kinds of missions. In my case, this mission was something personal for me. I remember how much he was too strong for me at the beginning of the game, but once I beat him in a long fierce fight, I had a great level of satisfaction. The majority of side missions of Metaphor were well done. Certain side missions, even if they are optional, add a lot to the stories. It was while doing side missions that I learned more about the world, like how the government works, how the religion of this world work, and what is the difference between the humanoid races, as well as the history of this world. All of this attention to details have been done so that you are immersed in the game universe. You have to play the game to understand what masterpiece this game is. On top of that, the art style of the game is splendid. Mwah. Some games use a photorealistic graphic style to make the game look good, but Metaphor uses a unique art style to make the game look good. It's like a living paint. Even though this game is generally a serious game, there are still moments of pleasant humor in this game. It's obvious that we put a lot of effort into the story of this game. On the other hand, a small flaw of the game is that the dungeon of the optional stories. Half of the optional dungeons are recycled environment like the forest level, the cavern level, or the tower, but with different colors and a small different layout. There are too many forests and caverns on side missions.
I'll cut you down.
Hardmancanada, how many times do we have to tell you not to lie to your roommate? Goro, stop doing that.
But why? It's fun to tease him.
It's dangerous to do that. He helped your guardian angel, Dokolokolo, to defeat several bad guys in the past to protect you. You should be grateful, because Goro's presence reduces the risk of villains coming to attack you by 80%. Dokolokolo planned everything to protect you, from the forces of evil.
If you keep this up, next time I will force you to do 10,000 push-ups. Okay, I get it. I'm going to tease him less often. Instead of doing that every day, I'm going to do it every 2 days. Archetype is a combat class mechanic that you can equip to your character. It is a mix between the job class from the Yakuza Like a Dragon series and the persona from the Persona series. Just like in Yakuza Like a Dragon, you equip your character with a job class that gives them different abilities. You have several choices such as Explorer, Healer, Thief, a Knight, a Fighter, a Magician, and so on. As you complete secondary mission, you unlock new archetype. Just like in Persona game, an archetype is a spirit that fights with you. The spirit is a manifestation of your character's true personality. It's comparable to a stand from JoJo Bizarre Adventure. In Yakuza RPG games, it's only the job class that you have equipped that gain the class experience. Leveling up several classes at the same time is not practical. On the other hand, in Metaphor, once your class, your archetype has reached the maximum rank, the bonus class experience becomes a class experience item that you can increase your secondary archetype. This is a big improvement in terms of quality of life. You can continue to use your favorite archetype and the other archetype will get experience. You couldn't do that in Yakuza Like a Dragon, but you can do this in Metaphor. This makes your character development much easier. The other improvement is compared to the Persona series. In Persona, it is only the main character who can change their personas. But in Metaphor, all controllable characters can change their archetype. And this is a huge improvement in terms of quality of life. Because in Persona, it was only the main character who was very versatile and had the potential to become overpowered with the right combination. But in Metaphor, all characters are versatile and they all have the potential to become overpowered depending on how you build your characters. And this is a big quality of life improvement compared to other Oculus RPGs. An important thing to optimize the archetype is to use the right compatible archetype depending on the status of your character. For example, Stroll, who is strong in physical attack, I put him the warrior as his primary archetype and the fighter as a secondary archetype. Because the main character is very strong in magic attack, I put the magician as the main archetype and the explorer as the secondary archetype. For Herkenberg, who has a good defense, I put her the knight as a main archetype and the healer as a secondary archetype. The knight has the ability that attract enemy attacks toward her, which protects her allies. Mixing the knight with the healer archetype is a perfect combination. Toward the end of the game, depending on how you build your character can be overpowered and some of them can be practically unkillable. Another quality of life improvement that I like about this game compared to other Oculus RPG like Persona, Yakuza RPG and Shin Megami Tensei is that when your main character dies, you are not game over, and I love it because it is fair. In other Oculus games that I mentioned, when your main character dies, You will game over even if your teammate were still alive. This is a bad game design because it is unfair, especially in a moment of cheap death. For example, the boss attacking the main character 3 times in a row and be game over because of that, or when a random enemy with an instant death ability target the main character. This improvement alone makes the game more enjoyable. You have no idea. When I'm in a long dungeon and didn't save for like 30 minutes, and I don't need to worry about the main character randomly dying a cheap death and lose my progress. You have no idea how many times I got game over in other Atlus RPG because the main character randomly dies in a cheap death. And I said to myself, that is unfair. Because of this reason alone, Metaphor is above all of the rest of the modern Atlus RPG. That's a huge quality of life improvement that I appreciate, and you have no idea how much I appreciate this. This alone makes the game worth it. Just like in Yakuza Like a Dragon and the Persona series, you can increase the personality trait of your main character by doing side missions or doing activity during your free time. Personality traits permit you to perform more action during your social rank interaction. Which allows you to unlock very important abilities that you can use in combat. In Metaphor, the character trait of your main character is called Royal Virtue. Just like in Yakuza Like a Dragon and Persona, during your free time, you can increase the social connection of your allies and friends that you have met during your journey. This element also has an improvement in quality of life. In Persona, when you interact with one of your allies, it is not guaranteed that your social rank will increase. Very often, you waste a day with your allies doing a filler activity that doesn't advance the side story of your character's social rank, and at the end of the day, there is a message like, next time I feel like my social rank might increase, or something like that. This kind of thing was discouraging because you wasted a day on an event that didn't achieve anything, and you did not advance your social rank. But Metaphor doesn't have this problem. Every time you do an activity with your friends during your free time, it is guaranteed that your social rank will increase 99% of the time. This improvement in quality of life changes anything in the way I schedule my week. Because of that, I can plan my week in a more efficient way without wasting any precious time.
Leave it to me.
Thank you, truly. Mother, please, be safe.
Another element is the difficulty of the game. I will use other RPGs as a reference on this tier list to illustrate the difficulty of Metaphor. This tier list talks about the series overall and not a game in particular. The higher the rank, the more difficult the game. In F rank are modern Pokemon games. A 3-year-old baby can win just by pressing A. In E rank are the Mario RPG game like Paper Mario and Mario RPG. E rank are games fit for beginners. D ranks are classic Pokemon games. Classic Pokemon games are a bit easier than the average difficulty. The C rank is the average difficulty of most RPGs like Yakuza Like a Dragon, Tales of, Final Fantasy, Persona and Persona games, and Fire Emblem games. A rank is for people who want to have the challenge of their life, like the game of Evolution for the Sega Dreamcast. Evolution has an unforgiving difficulty. I made a video about Evolution a few years ago. S rank are for deranged maniac who love to suffer, like the Dark Souls series and the Shin Megami Tensei series. People who play S rank RPGs difficulty have a serious problem. You should not talk to these type of people, and I am among those people that you should not talk because I play S rank RPGs. So if you see me in the street, you should not talk to me, and also remind you that you should not subscribe to my YouTube channel because I play S rank RPGs. And Metaphor is a game that I put in B rank because it is more difficult than the average RPG. The difficulty is comparable to Star Ocean games and Valkyria Chronicles series. Here's a comparison that Atlus fans will understand, because thanks to my fantastic mustache. Metaphor is more difficult than Persona games, but it is easier than Shin Megami Tensei games. In Metaphor, I played on hard difficulty and it took me more than 150 hours to beat the game. On the other hand, one of my friends finished the game in 90 hours, but he played on a normal difficulty because he is reasonable compared to me. With such a long game, the high price of the game, 90 Canadian dollars, is well justified. In addition to this, after finishing the game, you can do a new game plus, which means starting a new game with your previous memory. In a new game, you can unlock the maximum difficulty, the VGC difficulty. You can unlock new missions to fight against the secret boss. In addition, in a new game, you keep your money, you keep the majority of your items, and the rank of your archetype that you have unlocked are kept, and especially the state of your character's trait, also known as royal virtue, they are kept. This is very important because during your first game, it is not always possible to increase the social rank of all of your friends and to do all the side mission and the extra mission because your royal virtue was not high enough. But in the New Game Plus, as you do not have to spend a day to increase your royal virtue, this frees up your free time to increase your social rank or to do optional missions that you do not have time to do on your first playthrough. I played several RPGs in my life, and I played both classic RPGs from Virtual Console and modern RPG from Modern Console. But within all the modern RPGs that I play, I can say this, that Metaphor is the best one. To be more precise, Metaphor made it in my list of the top 5 RPG of all time. There is Breath of Fire 3 on the PlayStation 1, Grandia 2 on the Sega Dreamcast, Valkyria Chronicles 4 on the PS4, and Metaphor on the Xbox Series X. I replaced Valkyria Chronicles 1 with 4. Those of you who have known me for years know that I love Valkyria Chronicles 1, and I always say that it was in my top 4 best RPG of all time. But now Valkyria Chronicles 4 is better than Valkyria Chronicles 1 in almost every single aspect. Metaphor was a strong candidate to win the Game of the Year in 2024. But it lost to Astrobot, a very fun platform game that was made by the team that made the Ape Escape games. But Metaphor still won the RPG Game of the Year in some event. As a final remark, I put a score of 98% on Metaphor. Metaphor is an excellent RPG that contains several quality of life improvements compared to RPG games that have been made by the Atlus and Sega over the past 10 years. They use all the best elements from the Shin Megami Tensei series, Yakuza RPG series, and the Persona series. Metaphor is the perfection of the formula in terms of combat system, social rank, gameplay, and the way to tell a story. As Metaphor is a new series, this has a greater freedom of expression compared to other series that have already been established.
Try some of this!
For example, in general, Persona game is based on the daily life of a high school student. If we do something else, some Persona fan may not be happy, so it's a risk to do anything different. Personally, I would love to play a Persona game with a daily life of a 9-to-5 office worker, but I know that may never happen. In Yakuza game, it is generally the daily life of a member of the Japanese mafia or the ex-member of the Japanese mafia. If we do something different, the fan will not be happy and they will be justified. Otherwise, the title of the game, Yakuza, will not make any sense if we do something different.
What's the play?
But Metaphor can afford to experience and try other things. For example, the daily life of a soldier, and it's refreshing to see. One of the only faults of the game are the repeating of the optional dungeons and not having the ability to change your character archetype during combat. In summary, I recommend Metaphor to anyone who likes turn-based single-player RPGs and a good story. Bye everyone, I love you all because of my mustache. See you all next time, and thank you for watching my videos.